We're going up, up, up to the Upper Marae, where stories lift and voices fly. Put your tea towels down, let your worries fade. Open the gates, let the memories cascade. In this podcast world, we give it our best. So grab your cup or come say hi, no jest. We're going up to the Upper Marae, where conversations flow and spirits can't lie.
Welcome to the Upper Marae. I'm your host, Sione Finau. The gates are open, and in today's podcast, we talk about the learning journey of Māori and Pacific learners, exploring literacy, numeracy, identity, and the impact of lived experience of childhood sexual abuse through te ao marama. We have expert Dr. Stevens II.
Or Alexander. It doesn't matter which one you go for. Hello, Sione.
And how are we this evening?
We are good. It's a little bit windy outside, but we're good.
Please tell us your story.
I
guess in this context, because we're kind of exploring literacy and numeracy.
Yeah.
And this will probably be the first episode where we kind of talk about this. Mm-hmm. And then the combination of childhood sexual abuse. So, why is this an important topic? And why are we kind of segueing this?
So, back in 2002, I just finished doing my PhD, and I specifically looked at online technology to support our Māori and Pacific men, support people in community agencies affected by sexual abuse. One of the things that I wanted to understand was, what age did our men start to come forward and discuss or disclose that they had been abused? And the critical ages seem to be between 5 and 7 years old, where they would often tell a teacher first. If the teacher didn't believe them or didn't action it, then they were likely to have dropped out. Say maybe primary intermediate, but drop out in college early. What also happened for the majority of the men in my research was how the sexual abuse had affected them to the point where they became disengaged with learning, struggled really to be able to do what we would consider the basics like numeracy and literacy. So by the time that they were teenagers, their literacy and numeracy rates were quite low. They would drop out of school and wouldn't have very many options to support them as young adults working into adulthood.
I guess, given the context, explain what literacy and numeracy means, and then why is it important for them as adults, or I guess for us as adults?
So at the knuckle, at the core, think of numeracy and literacy really is about the ability to read and write and be able to do what I would think of as, especially numeracy, things like basic mathematics, maybe like creating a budget, for example. So that's how I would define those two things. And did you say how important is numeracy and literacy?
Yeah. As adults.
Yeah, absolutely vital. I'll give you an example. And it was something that I think I mentioned this a couple of podcasts ago, but I still think about it. It was where I said to you before, when I went in my role in drug and alcohol, I went to do an assessment at a client's house, and I noticed just the way that he had set up his cupboard is that all the pictures of the cans were front facing, and it was a bit strange to me, and I thought maybe he's got OCD, maybe he's got autism, something anyway, in terms of how he was displaying it. And so as I was asking him, I said, that's a really interesting way that you've set up your cupboard. He let slip that he couldn't actually read, and that he looked at the pictures as a guide in terms of what was in the cans. He could do basic maths, but like a budget, for example. But if you asked him to do anything, kind of like beyond that, it would be very hard and or difficult for him. So I realized as a drug and alcohol practitioner, which is one of my first roles, although it wasn't my role, how can I help this man become both with literacy as well as numeracy capable, because the stress of him not being able to read or write, and his writing was very basic, meant that he couldn't engage in community that you and I would take for granted. There's a really good example, Sione, when you went to buy your donuts. You get to read, how much are they, for example, they're 17 for 4, and you get an extra free one, but that's a side note. So that's the numeracy, but then you would think in your head, okay, how much money have I got in my account? So if I take, I don't know, I've got 500 in my account, for example, I take 17 away, how much will I roughly have? About 480, but sometimes people can't think about roughly anyway. People can't kind of make those jumps.
It was really interesting from like the drug and alcohol perspective, because many of the people I work with, they're on the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing is sometimes they can't afford it.
Yeah. Can't afford what?
Like all the drugs or alcohol.
Right.
I guess on the black market, I guess. They go through the tick system. They just try and tick.
So what is the tick system?
Oh, they call it ticking, I think, or ticks.
Okay.
And that's pretty much like buy now, pay later scheme.
Right.
And they kind of, say that they'll pay later.
Yeah.
They start collecting what we would call debt.
Okay.
And becomes problematic because it's not so much regulated. And I guess the rough side of that one is people start determining like the cost. But yeah, so that's kind of really interesting. And I guess that's where the importance of literacy and numeracy comes into play. But back to the topic at hand, which is the traumatic experiences through childhood, sexual violences. How does that affect learning?
Put it this way, when you're young and you experience a trauma like sexual violence, and especially if it's repetitive, it can affect the way that you see the world. You no longer feel safe. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to thrive. In fact, if anything, you're going to go into what I would call survival mode. What we know is that children have different environments like we do as adults. So you've got potentially a home environment, you might have your work environment, you might have your friends' environment. But for children, they've got home and school. But as their brains are developing, they don't have the ability to process things like what we do.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they're children, their brains are still developing.
Yeah.
So if they've been molested, raped, any of those things, we know that children shift and change. The brain starts to go into what we call survival mode rather than thriving mode. And so things like learning can be severely disrupted if not addressed with sooner rather than later. So, because you've read my PhD thesis, that's why I was very clear about the idea of the sooner we believe our children, the sooner that they can get help. The sooner we can avoid these long-term complicated issues.
I think with your experiences, because you've worked towards the end spectrum, right? Like they've had the childhood sexual violence. None of them were believed, and you worked with them.
Yes.
The adults. What sort of things have you been seeing, I guess, as a result? And then kind of related to literacy and numeracy.
Yeah, think about the big stuff. One is about reinstating trust, that not every single person is out to hurt you.
Oh, how does that work with, like, I guess...
It takes time.
Yeah. No, just with, like, everyday things.
That's
shopping.
What I mean.
Oh, wow.
It takes time, especially if you're going to make, I wouldn't say friends with clients, but if you're going to be civil, polite, it takes a long time to develop that trust.
You have to show them what respect and that looks like.
Sometimes you do.
Wow.
Sometimes I have to give very clear boundaries about what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah.
And that's before they even talk to me about some of their numeracy and literacy. Some of the bros that I worked with also struggled to get a job because they couldn't read or write.
Yeah.
So they were often in manual roles. But even in manual roles or labouring work, there are still elements of reading and writing and numeracy that still has to happen, but perhaps not at the same level for other roles. So what does that mean, Sione? That means that often our men don't go up salary-wise. in the way that they might do, have they had other opportunities because of their numeracy and literacy to get ahead? And then if you forward that bit out, if they were to have a family, then they've got limited income. They can create stressful situations for families, if you follow what I mean.
We haven't even factored in disability,
Well,
mental health.
That's right,
Although-
our rainbow community.
Yeah.
So, but these things are complex. That's why I really wanted to kind of focus on the digital technology first.
Yeah.
Set that up and then circle back to adult education and looking at the needs of our Māori and Pacific men who had been sexually abused and how it impacted on their education and ultimately this numeracy and literacy kōrero.
Talking about like the education system in New Zealand, do you think we're equipped to support our adult learners affected by childhood
No,
sexual abuse?
I don't think so. Nor do I think that we're set up to really look after our children. So some people might think, well, what do you mean? So, for our adult learners, there's lots of anxiety. Going back to study can be quite scary. If your numeracy and literacy is off, that can be off-putting. I've worked with adults where they want to get ahead, Sione, so badly. But when you see their assessments and what they've written, it's, with respect, very childlike. I don't mean that as an insult, but the writing can be very childlike. All their writing can be very much, what do we call it, Sione, when it's
Like
spelled like they
basic?
say it.
Oh, okay.
So,
So like those silent letters they might not pick up?
That's right.
Yeah.
Or the other one that comes up is that they write in text language.
They write in text language?
So, B4.
Oh, LOL.
Or before they use the letter B, the number 4.
Yeah.
It's what I would call pidgin English now that I think about it. And so they're not able to get roles that would enable them to get high salaries to help them get them and their whānau ahead.
Yeah, so them as adult learners in some place like maybe in a UT,
Yes.
would be definitely a struggle for them.
Yes.
In terms of academic writing.
Yes, this is where, in our previous conversation that we spoke about AI, that could be a really good example where they're able to type basic sentences and ask for help to lift their game.
That's,
However, it can also create a crutch
yeah,
or dependency.
that's what we would call equity.
Aye.
Moving on to the next topic, te ao marama. How would you explain that to someone who's never heard of it before?
Sure.
And why are we using it now?
Te ao marama is a framework that I created. Geez, it's been over 12 years ago, Sione, give or take. It's an 8 stage, is probably the best word, an 8-stage process where we start at what we call te kore, the state of chaos. And we'll walk you through this so we can give you good examples. Then looking at te kore, which is the potential. In other words, you've got yourself through this chaotic situation. Now where? Then we move into tile, or the environment. So what's the environmental space that you are in right now, and how do we get you where you need to go? And to be able to do that, we need to look at the next realm, which is maramatanga, so understanding the journey ahead. Who might be able to help you to get ahead? So that's what we call hapori, or community. Then we move on to hinginaro, so what's happening about how you're thinking and acting in this moment. Are you doing things to get yourself ahead, or are you doing a bit of self-sabotage? Then we look at tinana, which is the physical components of finding a way forward. And then ended within wider or wā, so the spirit, as well as space and time, which we can discuss as we go along.
So te kore, which is the chaotic space, right? Given if we put our learner in there, that's kind of the experiences they've had.
Yes.
How do we move them from te kore into te kore?
Yeah, that's such a good
Our
question.
learners.
Yeah, so if you think about those young boys that were sexually abused or violated, they then become adults, but they're still in a chaotic space. So part of te kore, or using te ao marama, is what's the chaotic factors that they are experiencing? So if they were working with me and I had my clinical hat on, I would be asking them questions around understanding, do you know where you're at? What does that look like? How long have you been there for? Is there anyone that can support you through this chaotic space? that might take 2 or 3 sessions to kind of unwrap or unfurl. Te kōrero or potential is, okay, so you've discussed that you've been, for example, significantly abused starting from 4 years old. You're now 34, so it's been 30 years. So that's a lot of chaos to have endured. But we also know that these experiences don't have to define who you are in the moment. Thinking about the potential to find a way forward, what would that look like for you?
Yeah. Do you think that means for educators or teachers, they have to develop some form of counselling skill?
Well, I think see, any of those helping professions, so teachers, counsellors, police officers, all the way up to the high-ranking like drug and alcohol clinicians, I think that we have to develop all kinds of skill sets to be able to get us ahead, Sione. And to be able to do that, sometimes we need to lean into other professions, but also being clear that we're not. So, for example, we're not social workers.
Yeah.
We're not psychologists. Like I said, if we look at it from a high-ranking position, we're drug and alcohol clinicians. So we can still lean into other professions like caring as a universal skill, for example. Financial capability sits within the realm of budgeters. However, it would be good for us to be able to be mindful of financial capability so that when we're thinking about how do we support our clients or our whānau, our tangata, whatever word you want to use, thinking at the back of my head is, do they have money to be able to get ahead? Is money something that's actually triggering them to start drinking? And then all those other things that are kind of crisscrossed out of it. And like if we go all the way back to school, many, not all, addictions and trauma can start off in childhood. So how do we help them deal with some of those things? And in education, I don't expect teachers or adult to be able to deal with all of it. However, in my role at AUT, I'm really clear that on Canvas, which is an online platform, I put up all the support services that are available. So AUT offers free counselling, for example. You don't want to do free counselling there, there's always Lifeline. If you're thinking suicidal thoughts, you might want to call the tautoko line. And all these numbers will be available on the description of YouTube, as well as the website standingtallnz.org.
Yeah, it's really funny. You're talking about all these different job roles. But you yourself have worked different job titles and carried some from working community to leadership levels. But focusing you as a teacher or kaiako, how have your experiences changed the way you see yourself as a kaiako?
Yeah, repeat that question again, Sione.
How has your experiences, I guess, working with those affected by childhood sexual violence changed the way you see yourself as a teacher, as a kaiako?
Yeah, I mean, I'm slightly different in that I'm already qualified in 7 different areas. That's not showing off, that's a fact.
Yes.
Adult teaching, I've got 4 qualifications from masters all the way down to level 7. And so for me, I tend to wear multiple hats. So, if I'm in lecturer mode and someone discloses that they're feeling triggered by some of the topics that I'm covering, could be mental health and addictions, for example. I really excelled at that, Sione. No surprises there. If someone's disclosing that they're feeling a bit suicidal, then I need to go into clinician mode. So even though I'm senior Māori academic, I'm still a drug and alcohol clinician. And my job is around counselling them on way forward. So I guess what I'm saying to you is that sometimes I've just got to switch hats, depending on what's happening. Or it could be budgeter. Student says to me, look, Alexander, I'm struggling a bit. And I'm like, financially, assignment, when you say struggle, what do you mean? Like, financially, I'm not going to open up my wallet and blow out dust and moths because I don't have money on me. But being able to say to them, well, actually, what's happening here? Do you mind if let's sit down, let's get some basic information, like a budget or whatever it is, so that you can get the right kind of support and I can refer you on to the right kind of help.
It is a lot, I guess, of pieces of information being passed around, but what are some effective teaching strategies for these adult learners affected by it?
I often think just a what I call a legal disclosure statement at the beginning. For example, Just before I start, people, I want to say that I'm going to be talking about suicide. I'm going to be talking about sexual abuse. I'm going to be talking about self-harm. So if this is one of those topics that potentially might trigger you, I give you permission to leave the class, but don't take off. Catch up with me afterwards, and let's get you the right kind of help. And I also want to put it out there, it's not weakness to ask for help. I'm training you to be the best health professional. So yes, you've come from other universities or institutes that are, not on par with where you're at right now at AUT, but my job's to how do I upskill you to be able to do this? Because at some point you might get a disclosure and someone's looking at you for safety. So yeah, that legal disclosure I think helps put people in the right kind of mind frame that what we're going to talk about is going to be sensitive, and I think they kind of get themselves prepared.
Yeah. And I guess strategies for adult learners. Can adult learners teach teachers in the way that might be helpful for them?
Absolutely. Remember, teaching isn't a one-way dimension. Actually, it's what we call feedback loops. So, I throw out my core knowledge, but I'm expecting that people are going to throw it back at me with love.
Yeah.
Heavens forbid if they throw something at me at my head, So I think a Eurocentric kind of teaching approach is I am expert.
You are a learner.
You are not. Yeah, you are a learner. I know everything you don't. My approach is very indigenous, which is I have some knowledge, you have some knowledge. How do we work together and fill this bucket of knowledge together? And sorry if I can just say, when I was teaching social work, the degree in bicultural social work at Manukau Institute of Technology many, many years ago, we were really clear about people have got to work on themselves first. So many people had experiences of sexual abuse, family harm or trauma. Okay. So rather than looking at it through a vicarious trauma lens, in other words, these are the things that hurt me, you need to go away and do some work on yourself. Whether that's going through counselling, an 0800 number, you need to do something about that if you're going to be the best social worker, or in our case, the best drug and alcohol clinician. It's not easy. It's not easy. And like I said, and if you add in the numeracy and literacy, there are many barriers, Sione, that not only our men, but our women face as well.
I know that the viewers of our recent podcast episodes are quite reasonably high for a local podcast group. If they were teachers or educators who are going to or maybe listening to this episode, what's something that you'd pass on to them?
Run, flee, escape, train, do a different profession. No. What I would say is, look, it's a special person that's a teacher. A teacher for me is a knowledge holder, but it shouldn't ever be used against someone.
Yeah.
So what's my advice? Hey, you've chosen a noble profession that's existed for hundreds of years.
Yes.
From yogis in India all the way through to philosophers in Greece.
Yeah.
All the way through to our tohungas, our healers in the Pacific Islands, for example. I guess from my perspective, it's about making sure that, hey, we need to be malleable and adaptive, because it's not only working with, say, family traumas. Now we've got AI challenging our authority around what is real and what's not. And then we've got people that say the worst things like, apparently. Anytime I hear the word apparently, Sione, it gives me the willies. Or if the other one is, do you think this is true? That's another one which just gives me the willies, because I'm like, Wikipedia is not an academic source, for example. So when someone says, hey, look, I read on Wikipedia, it takes every effort for me, Sione, not to say anything repugnant or smart. But I would say to our fellow educators, it's a beautiful experience on the whole. I actually prefer to work with adult learners. There was a time where I was working with year 9 and 10s, and honestly, didn't like it. Some of my other peers, they love it. I didn't. I thought, no. I'll work with you later when you drop out and become an adult, but not right now.
I guess in the many hats you've worn across your years of experience, what are some final reflections or final pieces of notes, I guess, on this episode?
Yeah, well, as someone who's just been recently awarded Upper Marae Educator of the Year, is it?
Well done.
2026?
Well done.
Faculty have Health and Environmental Science. What was it? Sorry, what final words?
Final comments.
I thoroughly enjoy being in this role.
Mm.
I enjoy watching students on the graduation.
Mm.
On graduation day, smiling out at the audience, waving at us, sometimes tripping up, being composed not to break out in a laugh and just make sure they're all right. It's a beautiful journey. And all jokes aside, it's a beautiful journey.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thank you, Dr. Alexander Stevens II. The gates are closing. And thank you for listening.
Malo.
Malo.
In this magical world.